Hi everyone, I will give you a presentation titled International Steps on Climate Change and Transition to the Paris Agreement under the Effect of COVID-19. First of all, let me introduce the authors. Alperen Sari is me. I am a PhD student at Gazi University. At the same time, I am the head of the Department of Construction in Vocational School at Ankara Medipol University. Our other author is Associate Professor Arzuhan Gultekin. She is also my PhD advisor and Vice Head of Civil Engineering Department at Gazi University. Our paper consists of 4 parts. In the introduction part, the steps about global warming and its perceivable effects are mentioned superficially. In part 2, we will discuss international effects towards the problem. We will talk about COVID-19 in part 3. Let's see how it affects our field of work. In the last part, all findings were compiled and necessary message was prepared for the readers, listeners in accordance with the purpose. A change of 0.74 plus or minus 0.18 degrees Celsius has occurred in the global warming amount positively between 1906 and 2005. If this situation progresses in the current manner, this increased value is expected to reach 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2040. So, it's necessary to look at the subject from a much broader perspective before addressing the issue in a sectoral manner. According to the study between 1951 and 2010, the biggest cause of global warming with 95% reliability is human activities. In other words, human beings are responsible for all of global warming. For this reason, a basic change of perception is needed instead of focusing on various sectors. The solution of climate change caused by global warming is no longer deferred. In this context, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was opened for signature in 1992. In this way, the first step towards raising awareness of the international public on climate change has been taken. The second main development is the Kyoto Protocol, which was agreed in 1997. The last big step is the Paris Climate Summit held in 2015. The first serious step taken in this regard can be accepted as the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Correct diagnosis must be made before the measures to be taken on the subject. It is important that the contract begins with the acceptance that human activities have major impacts on climate change. The main purpose of the contract is to control the greenhouse gas density and reduce it in the following process. UNFCCC was insufficient on many issues, so Kyoto Protocol was approved on 1997. We can say it was the second big step. Aim of this step was to eliminate the deficiencies and create more feasible system. If I talk directly about the numerical item, according to the Rule 3.1, the countries will reduce the amounts of greenhouse gas emissions at least 5% of their emissions in 1990. It's important. This is the clearest numerical declaration. According to the protocol, countries are divided into two as developed and developing countries. While developed countries are responsible, developing countries are not under any responsibility. So, some countries such as China and India are not under any obligation because of being in category of developing countries. However, as seen in figure, these countries such as China are the leading countries in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. This situation creates a deep discomfort. Flexibility mechanism, namely clean development mechanism, joint implementation and emission trading were introduced in order to ensure that countries achieve Kyoto Protocol targets. The clean development mechanism offers great opportunities for cooperation between developed and developing countries. Joint implementation system is a bit similar to the CDM. The emission trading system is a kind of exchange system. Most used flexibility mechanism is the clean development mechanism. According to this mechanism, the investor country is a developed country develops a project for emission reduction in a developing country. With CDM, developed country earns a certificate and credits. And also, developing country achieves a carbon emission reduction since the project is carried out in its own country. Joint implementation mechanism is similar to the CDM. With this, the investor countries earn credits. Countries can use their credits to both fulfill their greenhouse gas emission commitment and sell it to countries that have problems in complying with its commitment. And thus, the joint implementation prepares two countries for a large trade formation. Emission trading mechanism is, we can say, a trading system. Countries that comply with gas emission reduction targets and even achieve more reduction can sell their rights to countries that don't achieve this goal. In fact, emission trading mechanisms comply into the world system where everything is measured with money. In figure, there is a graphic prepared between 2008 and 2012 when the Kyoto Protocol was applied. In this figure, it can be seen that most of the European countries complied with commitments made under the protocol and had very successful results. More cooperation is made and the more participants are involved in the process, the greater the chances of success. In this regard, voluntary carbon markets were created besides the flexibility mechanisms of the Kyoto Protocol. These markets are not government initiatives, but are systems designed to provide a carbon balance in which everyone, from the local governments to individuals, can participate. Turkey is not in an obligation from Kyoto Protocol. When we look at the total amount of carbon emissions in the world, Turkey has a share of only 0.9%. Therefore, it's thought that there are no emissions problem in Turkey. But Turkey wants to be in an organization, so it participated in the voluntary markets. However, over time there is enormous growth in carbon emissions in Turkey. According to the report, compared between 1990 and 2018 data, an increase in the amount of carbon dioxide equivalent greenhouse gas emission occurred by 238%. As seen in figure, Turkey's amount of emissions equivalent to carbon dioxide reached 521 million tons by the end of 2018. In addition, the amount of greenhouse gas emissions per capita has reached 6.4 tons. Actions began to prevent graphics that show a negative increase in environmental aspects. Turkey has made a progress in the way of European Union membership with fulfilling the requirements regarding carbon emissions. In addition, according to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources of Turkey, Turkey has huge potential energy. For this reason, it can be found in much better place with right policies. The shortcomings of the process starting from the UNFCCC and continuing with the Kyoto Protocol are constantly discussed. The biggest problem seems to be the classification of developed and developing countries. Another big problem is the misuse of flexibility mechanisms created in Kyoto Protocol in order to reach targets more easily. Some of the developed countries try to fulfill their obligations directly through mechanisms without the need to take measures in their own internal dynamics. In this context, Paris Agreement was signed at the end of 2015, will come into force by end of 2020. Turkey prepared a national statement of intent and submitted to Commission before acceptance of the Paris Agreement. According to this statement of intent, reduction commitment was made by 21% in the scenario of amount of the greenhouse gas emissions prepared for between 2010 and 2030 as seen in figure. However, despite all attempts, the decisions expected from the Paris Agreement were not taken. Countries in the same category with Turkey, such as Mexico, Brazil, India, China, Qatar, and etc., will receive technological and financial assistance, but Turkey is not considered as equal with these countries. With Paris Agreement, there will be some improvements. For example, it is expected that all countries, not developing, all countries will keep the temperature increase below 2 degrees Celsius until 2100 compared to the pre-industrial period. Other that, 3 new mechanisms are introduced. Also, It is understood that one of mechanisms will be a bit similar to clean development mechanism. According to first case report, in the year of transition to the Paris Agreement, a virus named COVID-19 was emerged. With the spread of the virus, studies in many areas have been slowed down. Even official work has progressed to a minimum. All the gates between the countries were closed over time. Despite all these efforts, according to the most recent report, viruses have spread and millions cases were detected and thousands of hundreds deaths were recorded from the beginning to 27 September 2020. COVID-19 affects many areas. The slowing or stopping of work in all sectors means a decrease in energy demand. It is certain that there will be a change in the amount of greenhouse gas emissions during the pandemic process. You can see in figure, according to International Energy Agency report, energy demand decreased nearly 5-7% in the first quarter of 2020 compared to the first quarter of 2019. From the carbon emissions perspective, this decrease exceeded by 5%. It is expected that total carbon emissions at the end of 2020 will decrease by approximately 8%. Similar intervals can be seen in other papers. If the conditions are returned to time before the pandemic in mid-June 2020, amount of carbon emissions is expected to decrease between 4 and 7%. There is a decrease in transportation as well as a decrease in energy demand. The reduction in fossil fuel-based transportation and energy demand led to a noticeable positive change in air quality. It was determined that the deaths due to air pollution decreased by approximately 25% with various models. According to the International Energy Agency, total carbon emissions of the world were around 33 gigatons at the end of 2019. Drops ranging 1.3 to 2.6 gigatons are expected at the end of 2020. As can be seen in figure, this drop will take the world to levels about 10 years ago in terms of carbon emissions. There are similar examples in world history. Nearly the effects of COVID-19 are equivalent to 2 times of the sum of all the declines after the Second World War. Many environmental and positive effects of COVID-19 virus can be mentioned, but it should not be forgotten that all developments are temporary. When the virus is controllable and life returns to the pre-epidemic period, works in all sectors will continue, everything will be as before. In the history, sharp rises were observed after decreases in carbon emissions. You can see on figure, due to the global economic crisis between 2008 and 2009, amount of the carbon emissions decreased by 1.4%. However, various reasons caused an increase. The amount of carbon emissions grew by 5.9% and tolerated the previous year's decline. If we sum up all the information, there was a big event during the transition to the Paris Agreement, which is an important step in climate change. The aim of the agreements and protocols is already to reduce emission levels. This big event has a supporting effect on our goal. For this reason, we want to examine the period before the Paris Agreement and COVID-19, which emerged during the transition period. We are sure that as we continue to work on it, different information will be obtained, because we learn something new every day about COVID-19 and its effect on different industries. In this paper or study, information about the stages up to now on climate change was collected. So, for people who will study on climate change, this paper is very valuable. Thank you for listening.